Elias Core stared at the hollow screen in front of him, his jaw tight. The text glowed softly, yet it felt heavier than any weight he had ever carried. The message was simple, almost casual in tone, but the meaning was anything but. He had been assigned as the personal protector of Princess Lysera of the Arindian Empire. Most officers would have considered it an honor, but the whispers from the corridors of the Human Interstellar Command were merciless. "Elias Core?" one officer had asked with a laugh. "You're getting the Barren Princess? The galaxy will have a good joke about that." The words had stung, but Elias knew better than to react. He had learned long ago that other people's opinions were often just distractions. Still, the mockery did not fade from his mind. The Arindians were an ancient race, proud and rigid in their traditions. For humans who were still considered newcomers and barely advanced by galactic standards, this assignment was seen as an insult, a punishment even. And yet, as Elias prepared to leave, a strange feeling took root. Perhaps it was the thrill of the unknown, the pulse of danger that seemed to follow those who walked the path others feared. The galaxy might mock him now, but Elias had a quiet certainty. Humans were underestimated, and underestimated humans often surprised the universe. The transport ship hummed as it slid out of Earth's orbit. Inside, the cabin was sleek and sterile, more comfortable than a human ship usually was, yet still unwelcoming. Elias walked down the aisle carrying nothing but his pack and his standard-issue sidearm. The passengers around him were mostly Arindian envoys and officials. Their long, delicate fingers and pale, almost translucent skin gave them an ethereal look, but their eyes were sharp and cold. Many turned to glance at him, some with curiosity, most with barely concealed disdain. And then there was Lysera. She stood by the observation deck, looking out at the vast blackness of space. She was tall and graceful, with hair like silver threads flowing over her shoulders, but her eyes were harder than any weapon Elias had ever faced. She seemed distant, as if the galaxy outside the ship mattered more than the people inside. She wore the ceremonial blue of her house, decorated with patterns that shimmered faintly, though Elias did not know if they were purely aesthetic or had some deeper meaning. He approached her cautiously, knowing that any misstep could offend. "Princess Lysera," he said, bowing slightly in the human way, which he knew might seem clumsy to Arindian eyes. "I am Lieutenant Elias Core, assigned to your protection." She did not turn to him immediately. For a moment, the hum of the ship and the faint vibrations of the engines filled the silence. Then, finally, she glanced at him. Her expression was unreadable, but there was a flicker of something, curiosity, perhaps, or amusement. "Lieutenant Core?" she said, her voice smooth, measured, and faintly cold. "You have been sent to me."
Are humans capable of such responsibility?
Elias kept his calm. "I would not be here if I were not capable, Princess." Her lips curved slightly, not enough to be a smile, but enough to signal that she noticed his confidence.
"We shall see," she replied, and then she turned back to the viewport, leaving Elias to wonder whether that was an invitation or a warning. The first days on the transport were uneventful, if tense. Elias kept to his duties, checking security systems, monitoring communications, and quietly observing Lysera from a distance. He noticed how the other passengers treated her, with a mixture of awe, fear, and disrespect. Many whispered openly about her so-called barrenness, as if it were a failing of character rather than a private matter. Elias felt a pang of irritation. The galaxy was cruel, he realized. People mocked what they did not understand, and humans, being new to the stars, were always an easy target. But Elias also knew something crucial. Humans adapted, learned, and endured. Where others saw weakness, humans often found strength. He reminded himself of that every time someone snickered or shot him a condescending look. On the third day, an alarm sounded. It was a subtle, low vibration, barely noticeable at first, but enough to make Elias's instincts flare. He rushed to the observation deck, expecting to find panic. Instead, Lysera was calm, almost serene, as she studied a map of nearby star systems. "They are watching?" she said without looking at him. "We are entering contested space. Be ready." Elias nodded. "I am always ready, Princess." She finally looked at him, her eyes piercing. "Humans are unpredictable," she said. "Perhaps that is why you were sent." The phrase lingered in the air, strange but not entirely unwelcome. Elias did not respond immediately. Instead, he scanned the ship's instruments and noticed small energy spikes that indicated the presence of unknown sensors outside. Someone, or something, was observing them. As the ship traveled deeper into Arindian space, Elias found himself thinking not of the ridicule he had endured, but of the challenge ahead. Protecting the princess was more than a ceremonial duty. It could shape the future of human and Arindian relations. Every decision he made, every step he took, would be watched by officials across multiple star systems. He had to be precise, calm, and vigilant. At night, if it could be called night in a ship that traveled through endless space. Elias reviewed the information he had gathered. The Arindian Empire was vast and complex, with political factions as intricate as a web. Lysera, despite her youth, was central to the Empire's survival. Her barrenness was not just a personal matter. It had consequences for alliances, for succession, and for the balance of power in the galaxy. Protecting her meant understanding not only the physical threats, but the political and cultural ones as well. And then something unexpected happened. Lysera approached him while he was studying the ship's data on a small holoscreen. "You do not sleep much," she observed. "I sleep when I must," Elias replied. "Duty does not allow for more." She studied him for a long moment, her eyes searching. "You are different from the others," she said finally. "You do not fear what they say, and you do not underestimate me. That is rare." Elias inclined his head. "I do not judge people by rumors or appearances, Princess. Only by what I see and what they do." She nodded, and for a brief moment the distance between them lessened. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but Elias felt a flicker of trust forming. Perhaps this was the first step toward a true partnership. The journey continued, and tensions rose with each passing light cycle. The ship passed through asteroid fields, dodged rogue comets, and navigated regions where gravitational anomalies could tear a vessel apart. Elias remained alert. His senses stretched to their limits. The other passengers began to notice his competence. Murmurs replaced laughter. Some even offered small gestures of respect, though none were yet bold enough to openly acknowledge it. Lysera, too, began to reveal hints of her personality beyond the icy exterior. In private moments, she asked questions about human customs, about strategies for defense, about the nature of courage. Elias answered honestly, knowing that his knowledge of humanity and of the galaxy might be her only guide through the perils that awaited. Then came the incident. A minor skirmish with space pirates, though small in scale, tested everything Elias had prepared for. The pirates attempted to board the transport, expecting an easy target. Elias coordinated defenses, anticipating their moves and improvising when their tactics defied expectation. Humans lacked the raw strength of some alien species, but they had adaptability, cunning, and unpredictability. He leveraged these qualities to protect the princess and secure the ship. When it was over, Lysera regarded him with new eyes. "You are capable," she said quietly. "Perhaps I misjudged humans." Elias allowed himself a small smile. Perhaps the galaxy underestimates us too often. The rest of the voyage passed without incident, but the dynamic between the human lieutenant and the Arindian princess had shifted. Elias was no longer just the subject of ridicule. He was a necessary presence, someone who could navigate the dangers of space and the complexities of politics alike. And Lysera, though still distant, began to trust him incrementally, relying on his judgment and insight. By the time they reached the Arindian homeworld, Elias felt a sense of anticipation he had not known before. The planet itself was breathtaking and forbidding, a landscape of jagged mountains, silver forests, and skies tinted with perpetual twilight. From orbit, the palace loomed like a crown of stone and metal, its spires catching the light of a distant sun. Elias understood that stepping onto this world meant entering a realm where every action would be scrutinized. The galaxy might have mocked him, but now the true challenge awaited, ensuring the safety of the princess, navigating a court filled with intrigue, and proving that a human could indeed stand shoulder to shoulder with the most powerful rulers in the universe. And deep down, Elias knew that mockery was only the beginning. The galaxy had underestimated humans before, and this time, they were about to see what humans could truly do. The landing platform of Arindia's main palace shimmered beneath the glow of the planet's dim sun. Elias Core felt a mixture of awe and tension as he stepped off the transport with Princess Lysira. The air was thin, tinged with metallic scent, and carried a faint hum, as if the planet itself was alive. Towering spires rose in all directions, adorned with shifting crystal patterns that reflected light like 1,000 tiny stars. Yet the beauty could not hide the sense of watchfulness, of hidden eyes everywhere, judging every move. Lysira walked with quiet grace, her silver hair brushing against the ceremonial robes of her house. Elias followed close behind, noting the subtle ways she moved through the palace gates, how she acknowledged courtiers and guards. With a flicker of a glance, every gesture seemed precise, calculated, as if nothing could be left to chance. Despite the whispers and rumors, Elias began to sense the quiet strength beneath her calm exterior. The moment they entered the main hall, Elias felt the weight of countless eyes upon him. Courtiers, nobles, and advisors filled the chamber, their pale features and elongated fingers giving them a regal, almost fragile appearance. Yet their gazes were sharp, assessing, and when they saw Elias, a human, standing behind the princess, the expressions shifted from curiosity to barely concealed disdain. "You are the human they sent?" one elder whispered, loud enough for Elias to hear. "Do they truly believe he can protect her?" Elias did not respond. He had learned long ago that patience was often the best answer. Instead, he scanned the hall, noting the architecture, the hidden walkways, the positions of guards, and the subtle patterns of movement among the courtiers. Humans might be underestimated, but observation and analysis were weapons often stronger than any blade. Lysira's voice cut through the murmurs. "Elias Core," she said, her tone calm yet commanding. "This is your domain now, as much as mine. Observe, learn, and act when necessary. Do you understand?" "I do, Princess," Elias replied. "I will serve as your protector in every way I can." Her eyes studied him for a long moment. "Very well, do not disappoint me." The first few days in the palace were tense. The courtiers did not hide their skepticism, nor did the advisors conceal their open mockery of Elias. They whispered that the human would fail, that Lysira would always be the Barren princess, and that no outsider could navigate their politics. But Elias noticed something that the others ignored. Small discrepancies in the palace routines, subtle signs of tension among the nobles, and a network of hidden passages and chambers that no guide had mentioned. He began mapping the palace mentally, noting where threats could come from, where escapes were possible, and where Lysira might be vulnerable. One evening, while walking through a corridor lined with crystal panels, Elias noticed a faint glow coming from behind a tall archway. Curious, he approached cautiously and found a hidden door, partially ajar. Inside was a small chamber filled with artifacts and relics from the Arindian Empire's long history. Ancient tomes floated slightly above their shelves, illuminated by faint energy fields. Symbols of power and authority glimmered on the walls. Elias's eyes widened. This was more than decoration. It was a repository of knowledge, secrets that the Empire had hidden from the public. He realized that understanding these artifacts could be crucial to protecting Lysira and navigating the complex political landscape of Orindia. Lysera entered quietly behind him, her presence almost ghostly. "You have found the inner archives," she said softly. "Few are allowed here. You have curiosity, human, which is both dangerous and useful." "I am here to protect you," Elias replied. "Understanding this place seems like part of that duty." She studied him with a mixture of surprise and admiration. "Most humans would be intimidated, yet you are not. Perhaps that is why you were sent." Over the following days, Elias began guiding Lysera through the palace in subtle ways, showing her hidden passages, escape routes, and weak points in the defenses. He learned of plots whispered in the hallways, minor factions conspiring to discredit her or undermine her authority. The galaxy might have mocked her as Barren, but Elias realized that the true danger was political, more dangerous than any physical threat could be. Then came the first major test. A group of advisors, resentful of Lysera's growing influence and suspicious of Elias's presence, confronted them in the private audience chamber. Their tone was sharp, their accusations pointed. "You trust this human too much," one elder said, his voice tight with anger.
"He knows nothing of our ways. You are making a mistake that could ruin the Empire."
Lysera's face remained calm, but Elias sensed her tension. He stepped forward slightly, his posture deliberate, confident. "Princess Lysera has the right to choose who she trusts," he said firmly. "I serve to protect her, not to interfere in the Empire's politics. But I will act if anyone threatens her." The room fell silent. Elias's words were simple, yet they carried weight. Humans were often underestimated, and no one expected them to speak with such clarity and courage. Lysera's gaze met his. For the first time, there was a flicker of approval in her eyes. She stood taller, her posture rigid with authority. "You see, gentlemen," she said, her voice steady. "He is not merely my protector. He is a human with insight, and insight is more valuable than idle criticism." The advisors scowled but did not press further, at least for now. Elias realized that words could be weapons, as sharp as swords, when wielded with confidence and truth. In the days that followed, Elias and Lysera began to explore the outskirts of the palace grounds. The gardens were strange and alien, with plants that shimmered faintly and reacted to the movement of light. Streams of liquid silver flowed through carved channels, reflecting the dim sunlight. Lysera seemed at ease here, speaking more freely than she had within the palace walls. "I was not always this way," she admitted one afternoon as they walked along a terrace overlooking the jagged landscape. "I was taught to be distant, to appear weak, so others would not see the power I carry. But the galaxy does not understand subtlety. They see what they wish, not what is true." Elias nodded. "Humans are often the same. The galaxy sees our flaws and mocks them, yet our greatest strengths are the ones no one notices at first. Adaptability, ingenuity, determination. We survive because we learn quickly and act decisively." She studied him, as if measuring the weight of his words. "Perhaps that is why you are here. Not because of your strength, but because of your mind. And perhaps because humans can inspire others to see beyond appearances." Their trust grew slowly, like a candle flickering against the wind. Elias did not rush it. He knew that in this world patience and observation were as vital as courage. He continued mapping the palace, noting hidden guards and unguarded entrances, tracking the flow of influence among the nobles, and he noticed something else. An ancient artifact tucked away in the deepest part of the inner archives. It was a small, orb-like device, pulsating faintly with a blue glow. Symbols carved into its surface seemed almost alive, shifting subtly as he stared. Lysera entered the chamber just as Elias touched it lightly. "Be careful," she warned. "That artifact has been here for centuries. No one fully understands its purpose. I only want to understand it," Elias said. Perhaps it could help you. Or protect you. Lysira approached, her fingers brushing the surface of the orb. The glow intensified, and for a brief moment a wave of warmth spread through the room. Elias felt a tingle of something he could not name, a sense that the artifact was alive in some way, responding to their presence. You see? Lysira whispered. This is why the galaxy fears change. They do not understand what lies dormant, waiting to be awakened. Perhaps this is why humans are needed after all. You see what others overlook. Elias felt a surge of pride, not for himself, but for the potential he glimpsed in her. The galaxy mocked them, yes. They saw a barren princess and a human they assumed was weak. But Elias knew the truth. This partnership could reshape their world. With careful thought, courage, and ingenuity, they could face threats both political and physical, and perhaps even awaken something long hidden. By the end of the week, the first test had passed. Elias had navigated the subtle politics of the court, protected the princess from both open and covert threats, and begun to earn a grudging respect from some of the palace staff. Lysira had begun to show hints of change, not in strength or skill, but in awareness. She moved with more confidence, spoke with greater authority, and allowed herself to trust Elias in ways she had not done with anyone before. Elias stood on the balcony one evening, looking out over the alien horizon. The jagged mountains glowed faintly in the twilight, and streams of silver water reflected the twin moons above. He felt a quiet certainty settle over him. The galaxy had laughed at his assignment. They had mocked the Barren princess. But neither of them was as weak as the universe believed. Humans had survived against overwhelming odds for centuries. They adapted, they learned, they endured, and Elias knew that this was only the beginning. The palace, the empire, the galaxy itself, everything would test them, but with courage, wit, and trust, they could face whatever came next. And somewhere deep inside, Elias felt that spark, the sense that humans were meant to surprise the galaxy, that their potential, often overlooked and dismissed, was far greater than anyone imagined. And he would ensure that both he and the princess would show it. The palace was quieter than usual, a calm that felt almost unnatural in a place built for scrutiny and intrigue. Princess Lysira moved through the halls with a purpose, her silver hair catching the faint light from the crystal walls. Elias Kor followed at a careful distance, keeping his senses alert. Something had changed in her since the discovery of the orb in the inner archives. There was a subtle shift in her posture, a confidence in her stride that he had not seen before. For days the orb had glowed faintly whenever she was near, and Elias had watched carefully, trying to understand its strange effect. The scholars of Arindia avoided discussing it, calling it ancient mysticism and legendary superstition. Yet the princess seemed drawn to it, touching it lightly, speaking to it in whispers, as if it responded to her in ways that no human or alien mind could fully explain. "You have changed," Elias said one morning as they walked through the palace gardens, the alien flora shimmering in soft colors he had no names for. "You are more focused, more certain of yourself." Lysira glanced at him, a small smile touching her lips. "I am learning," she said quietly. "I always thought I was limited, that I would always be what they called barren. But perhaps limitations are only in the mind. Perhaps they are imposed by those who fear change." Elias nodded. Humans often face the same. Others doubt us. The galaxy sees our weaknesses first, but strength comes from persistence, from adaptation, from not letting fear decide what you are capable of. Lysira paused, looking out over a stream of silver water that reflected the twin moons of Arindia. "You speak as if humans have been tested before, and yet the galaxy still mocks you, still underestimates you. That is why we survive," Elias replied. "Being underestimated is an advantage. It allows us to act in ways no one expects, to rise where others falter, to succeed when everyone else fails. Her gaze softened, and for the first time Elias thought he saw vulnerability beneath the strength. She was aware of the dangers that surrounded her, the conspiracies, the political games, the hidden threats that could undo her before she had a chance to lead. But there was also curiosity, a hunger to understand, to grow beyond the limitations the galaxy had placed upon her. The change in Lysera became more evident over the following days. She began to anticipate challenges before they arose, noticing subtle signs in the court that Elias would have overlooked even with his human intuition. Her attention to detail grew sharper. She corrected advisors with calm authority, asserting her perspective without aggression. And every time she approached the orb, its faint glow seemed to pulse more brightly, as if responding to her presence. One afternoon, a minor crisis erupted. An unknown faction within the palace attempted to manipulate the security protocols, creating false alarms to test Elias and unsettle the princess. Sensors indicated unusual energy signatures near the palace perimeter, suggesting that intruders were attempting to breach the defenses. Elias acted quickly, coordinating with the palace guards, analyzing the anomalies in real time, and predicting the intruders' paths. Humans were slower physically than some alien species, but Elias relied on strategy and improvisation. He positioned guards along unseen corridors, used the palace layout to create traps, and prepared contingencies for every possible scenario. Lysera watched, initially silent, but then she stepped forward. "Do not waste effort on predictable paths," she said, her voice steady. "They will seek the corridors they think we cannot monitor. Check the overlooked areas. Trust what seems insignificant. It is often the key." Elias paused, impressed. Her intuition mirrored the human ability to see beyond the obvious.
"You are learning fast," he said quietly. Together, they thwarted the intruders.
The palace's security remained intact, and the conspirators were caught before they could cause real damage. Lysera's confidence grew, and for the first time, Elias saw her smile fully. No hesitation, no doubt. The princess was beginning to realize that her perceived limitations were not real. That night, Elias studied the palace archives again. He noticed patterns among the artifacts, subtle connections between symbols and energy flows that no one else had discerned. It became clear to him that the orb was not merely a relic. It was part of a system designed to unlock latent abilities within certain individuals. Lysera might not be barren in the ways the galaxy assumed. She might possess potential that could reshape her people and her empire. He brought his observations to her the next morning. "I think the orb is more than a symbol," he said. "It may be a key to abilities that have been dormant for generations. And it responds to you specifically, Princess." Lysera studied him intently, her eyes reflecting a mixture of fear and hope. "Do you think it can change me? Make me more?" "I think it will reveal what is already inside you," Elias replied. "But it will require trust, discipline, and patience." They began a quiet routine. Each day, Lysera spent time near the orb, observing its patterns, listening to its hum, and practicing subtle exercises Elias devised to enhance focus and awareness. He guided her carefully, never pushing too far, always emphasizing observation and control. Over time, he noticed changes. Her reflexes became faster, her perception sharper, her decisions more precise. Small things at first, catching a falling cup before it hit the floor, noticing subtle shifts in the behavior of the palace staff. But gradually, larger abilities began to manifest. One evening, a messenger arrived from a neighboring system with urgent news. A plague of unknown origin was spreading rapidly, targeting leaders and rulers. The galaxy's political balance was at risk. The Arindian Empire could be devastated if the princess remained vulnerable. Elias and Lysera realized the stakes were higher than ever. "It is not enough to survive," Elias said, pacing in the palace study. "We must be proactive. We must understand this plague, its origin, its spread, and its potential impact. Humans have faced crises before. We adapt and we endure. Lysera nodded. Then we begin. I will not be a passive ruler. I will not be powerless while the galaxy shifts around me. Together, they worked. Elias applied his human knowledge of biology, patterns, and strategy, while Lysera integrated her growing abilities and insight. They uncovered subtle patterns in the plague's movement, identified potential safe zones, and developed protocols to protect the population. Her mind, enhanced by the orb, processed information faster than she ever had before, allowing her to act decisively. Meanwhile, factions within the palace continued to plot, resentful of her sudden change in ability and authority. Some attempted to discredit Elias, spreading rumors that he was manipulating the princess for human advantage. Others tried to sow fear in Lysera, claiming that the orb's influence was dangerous. Elias handled these challenges with calm strategy. He exposed lies, intercepted secret communications, and quietly ensured that the princess's authority remained unchallenged. He relied on human adaptability and ingenuity, traits the galaxy often underestimated, to navigate the treacherous waters of court politics. One night, while they were analyzing data from the plague reports, Lysera suddenly looked up, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light of the chamber. "Elias," she said softly, "I feel different, stronger, aware of things I could not perceive before. It is as if the world itself is clearer." Elias studied her carefully. "That is the orb responding to you. You are not changed in ways that others can see easily, but your mind, your senses, your intuition, they are expanding. You are beginning to see what others cannot." Lysera's lips curved into a small smile. Then perhaps the galaxy's mockery was misplaced. Perhaps they will see that their assumptions were wrong. Elias allowed himself a small, quiet smile as well. They will see. And when they do, they will understand that humans, and those who trust humans, cannot be underestimated. The days that followed were filled with rigorous training, political maneuvering, and subtle tests of skill. Lysera's abilities continued to develop. She could anticipate movements in the palace, detect hidden threats, and make rapid decisions with precision. Her presence became a beacon of confidence for the palace staff, and even some skeptical nobles began to respect her authority. Yet Elias remained cautious. He knew that power could attract danger as easily as it inspired loyalty. He monitored every detail, ensuring that every weakness was covered, every possibility accounted for. Humans were adaptable, yes, but the universe was unpredictable. Vigilance could never be relaxed. One afternoon, as they walked through the palace gardens, Lysera paused beside a silver-leafed tree. "Elias," she said, her voice thoughtful, "do you think humans ever truly understand what it means to be underestimated?" Elias smiled. "We do, and we turn it into strength. The galaxy may mock us now, but every challenge we face, every doubt they cast upon us, it only sharpens our resolve. We adapt, we endure, and we rise." Lysera nodded, her gaze fixed on the distant horizon where jagged mountains met the twin moons. "Then I will rise, and I will no longer be what the galaxy thinks I am. I will be more, and I will not stand alone." Elias placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You will never stand alone. And together we will show the galaxy that the underestimated are often the most capable of all." By the end of Part 3, the transformation was undeniable. Lysera was no longer the passive, dismissed princess. Her mind was sharper, her senses keener, and her confidence unshakable. Elias had not only protected her, but had helped awaken potential that the galaxy could not have anticipated. The palace, the empire, and the galaxy itself were about to witness a change they had never imagined. And at the heart of it stood two unlikely allies, a human, underestimated and mocked, and a princess, once thought powerless, now on the path to becoming unstoppable. The palace corridors buzzed with quiet tension. Word had spread across the galaxy that Princess Lysera was changing, that the once dismissed and mocked ruler was now demonstrating intelligence, perception, and abilities that few could understand. Envoys from neighboring systems arrived, some with curiosity, some with skepticism, and others with thinly veiled contempt. They had come to see the Barren princess for themselves, expecting weakness, only to find a ruler who no longer fit the narrative the galaxy had written for her. Elias Kor walked beside her as they received the first delegation. He noted every expression, every subtle gesture, every flicker of doubt or surprise in the alien ambassadors' faces. Humans were often underestimated, but that made them even more effective observers. The delegation was led by a tall, blue-skinned envoy from the Drivian Coalition, a group that prided itself on centuries of political maneuvering. "She is human-influenced," one whispered to another, clearly disbelieving what they saw. Lysera's gaze was steady as the envoy approached. Elias felt the quiet power in her presence, the confidence that had grown over months of training, observation, and interaction with the mysterious orb. She radiated authority now, not through intimidation, but through clarity and calm command. "Princess Lysera," the envoy began, his voice polite but measured. "We have heard much of your circumstances. We wish to see for ourselves whether the reports were accurate." Lysera inclined her head slightly, her silver hair catching the ambient light. "And what reports are these exactly?" she asked. Her voice carried no malice, only a quiet strength that immediately unsettled the Drivian diplomat. "That you are powerless. That your abilities, your influence, are limited. That your empire may be unstable," he said, choosing his words carefully. Elias noticed the faint tightening in the envoy's hands. The human had not intimidated him, yet the words were meant to provoke. Lysera, however, did not waver. "Power is not only measured by appearances," she said. "It is measured by insight, by strategy, and by the ability to act when necessary. Let us see what can be accomplished, not what can be assumed." Elias's pulse quickened slightly, not from fear, but from anticipation. This was the moment to demonstrate that humans, even when underestimated, could change outcomes with ingenuity, foresight, and courage. Over the next several days, the palace became a stage. Every envoy observed carefully, testing Lysera with questions, requests, and simulated crises. Elias coordinated everything behind the scenes. He anticipated challenges, created strategies, and used human ingenuity to ensure that the princess's abilities were showcased subtly, yet effectively. The first test came in the form of a simulated crisis. A holographic display projected the approach of rogue ships through Arindian space. The envoys assumed Lysera would panic, that she would rely solely on her human protector to resolve the situation. Instead, she assessed the threat, analyzed the trajectory of the ships, and issued precise instructions to the palace defense systems. The ships were redirected, potential damage minimized, and the simulation ended with perfect efficiency. Elias felt a surge of pride. Humans were underestimated, yes, but he had taught her to combine observation, strategy, and trust. She was learning faster than anyone could have imagined. But the galaxy was not merely a stage for simulations. Reality arrived sooner than expected. A real threat emerged. The neighboring system of Vryn, known for aggressive expansion, had dispatched a patrol fleet into Arindian territory, the envoys whispered anxiously, convinced that the princess would falter. Elias acted immediately. He analyzed the fleet's trajectory, the speed of their vessels, and potential weak points in their formation. Using simulations based on human tactics, he proposed a strategy to Lysera. "They will expect a direct confrontation," Elias said, pointing at the holographic map. "But humans excel when the outcome is unpredictable. We must use the terrain to our advantage and guide them into zones where their movement is limited. Then, their own momentum will become their weakness." Lysera studied the plan carefully, her mind working with clarity that was new even to her. "And if they adapt?" she asked. Then we adapt faster, Elias replied. We observe, we anticipate. We act decisively. The galaxy may not expect humans to outthink them, but that is our advantage. The next day, as the Vryn fleet approached, the palace control room became a theater of tension. The alien envoys watched silently, waiting for failure. Lysera, standing beside Elias, issued orders with calm authority. The palace defense systems, guided by the princess's insights and Elias's human-influence strategies, redirected the fleet. Mines were deployed in corridors the enemies had assumed safe, turrets activated in precise sequences, never wasting energy. By the time the Vryn ships realized the trap, several were immobilized, and the rest retreated. The envoys were stunned. Murmurs of disbelief spread across the room. It cannot be, one said under his breath. She is commanding as if she has seen 100 battles. Elias felt a quiet satisfaction. He did not seek praise. He had prepared her, guided her, and allowed her potential to manifest. The galaxy's assumptions were being shattered. Humans were clever, adaptive, and unafraid to act when it mattered. But the victory also brought new challenges. The Vryn retreat signaled to other factions that the princess was not to be underestimated. Some sent spies disguised as merchants. Others attempted to infiltrate the palace with false credentials. Elias, relying on both human observation and Lysera's heightened awareness, intercepted every attempt. Each success built her confidence, reinforcing the bond between protector and princess. One evening, after a particularly long day of political maneuvering and strategic planning, Lysera and Elias walked through the palace gardens. The twin moons reflected off silver streams of water, casting a calm glow over the alien flora. "You have taught me much, Elias," she said softly, "not just about strategy or observation, but about trust, about how to see beyond what is expected." Elias smiled quietly. "You had the ability all along, Princess. Humans often see potential in what others dismiss. I only helped you recognize it in yourself." Lysera paused, looking out at the distant horizon. Then perhaps the galaxy's mockery was not completely wrong. "It underestimated me, and underestimated you. But we have both grown beyond their expectations." Elias nodded. "And we will continue to grow. The galaxy is vast and unpredictable, but humans endure, adapt, and rise when necessary. Never forget that." The weeks that followed were a careful balance of diplomacy and demonstration. Lysera met with envoys from multiple star systems, each visit carefully orchestrated by Elias to showcase her abilities. She resolved disputes with clarity, anticipated logistical challenges, and handled crises with calm precision. The palace staff began to look to her for guidance, and even skeptical nobles started to acknowledge her authority. Through it all, the orb remained a constant presence. Its glow responded subtly to her thoughts, its energy seemingly harmonizing with her own emerging abilities. Elias studied it carefully, noting patterns that could be harnessed to further enhance her perception and intuition. The princess was becoming more than anyone had predicted, a leader who combined ancient knowledge, newly awakened abilities, and human-influenced strategy into something formidable. Yet Elias knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy watched, and some factions would not rest until they had tested her fully. Humans were often underestimated, and enemies assumed that underestimation would work in their favor. But Elias had seen the truth. Underestimated humans, when prepared and willing to act, could change outcomes in ways that no one anticipated. One night, a small council of ambassadors requested a demonstration of Lysera's abilities in a controlled scenario, a test of her command and foresight. They had heard rumors of her recent successes and wanted proof. Many expected a failure, anticipating hesitation or uncertainty. Elias prepared the simulation carefully. The holographic display projected a complex scenario involving multiple fleets, trade routes, and potential crises. Lysira studied it with calm focus, analyzing every variable, predicting outcomes, and issuing commands with precision. The simulation ended with perfect efficiency, with no mistakes, no wasted energy, and complete resolution of potential threats. The ambassadors were speechless. Some whispered to one another. Others recorded the session in disbelief.
"It cannot be," one said quietly.
"The human-influenced princess. She is beyond what we imagined." Elias watched quietly, proud but restrained. Humans did not need applause to be effective. They needed opportunity, observation, and trust. And Lysira had shown all three in ways the galaxy could not have anticipated. That night, as they walked through the palace gardens once more, Lysira stopped beneath a silver-leafed tree. The twin moons reflected off her hair, making it shimmer like liquid light. "The galaxy is beginning to see," she said softly. "They are starting to realize that I am not what they believed, and perhaps they are beginning to see that you are not what they expected either." Elias placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "The galaxy will always underestimate humans," he said. "It is our advantage. And together we will continue to show that the underestimated are often the strongest of all." The change in Lysira was undeniable. She was no longer the passive, dismissed princess. Her mind was sharper, her authority unshakable, and her confidence radiant. And with Elias at her side, guiding, observing, and preparing for every eventuality, the galaxy's mockery began to lose its power. Enemies would come, challenges would rise, and the political landscape would shift, but Elias knew one thing. Humans had survived against impossible odds for centuries. They adapted, learned, and endured, and now in the heart of the Arindian Empire, a human and a princess were about to show the galaxy that even the most underestimated could rise to greatness. The palace of Arindia was alive with tension. News of Princess Lysira's growing abilities and decisive leadership had spread across the stars. Ambassadors and envoys arrived, some eager to ally with her, others suspicious and resentful, yet all curious to see the human-influenced princess in action. Elias Kor walked beside her, alert and calm, ready for any threat, political, strategic, or otherwise. The galaxy had mocked them, yet now it was watching closely, waiting to see if the princess and her human protector could truly live up to the rising reputation. Lysira stood on the balcony overlooking the city, the silver light of the twin moons casting a glow across the jagged architecture. Her eyes, once distant and wary, now glimmered with confidence. Elias watched her quietly. The transformation was undeniable. The princess, who had been dismissed as powerless, now moved with authority, clarity, and a subtle power that radiated from her very presence. "They are watching," she said softly, her voice carrying over the balcony's edge. "They expect hesitation, weakness. They assume we are the same as before." Allison's nodded. "And we will give them something else. Humans are underestimated, Princess. That has always been our strength. They never expect us to adapt so quickly, to think differently, to act decisively." Lysira turned to him, a small smile forming. "Then let us not disappoint them." The first real test came swiftly. A coalition of rival systems, alarmed by her rise, attempted to manipulate Arindia's political council, pushing for measures that would undermine her authority. Simultaneously, rumors of a renewed threat from the Vryn fleet reached the palace. This time, not a simulation, but real ships moving toward Arindian space. The galaxy's mockery was replaced by challenge. Elias moved through the palace control rooms with efficiency, monitoring incoming messages, fleet movements, and potential infiltrations. Every sensor, every alert, every report was analyzed, and human ingenuity shaped their response. Lysira, now more perceptive than ever, worked alongside him, anticipating threats and countering them with calm authority. Together they became a seamless team. Strategy and intuition combined in perfect balance, the rival coalition demanded a demonstration of her capabilities in the Council. They expected hesitation, an inability to act decisively, and a failure that would reaffirm the galaxy's preconceptions. Instead, Lysera presented a plan that addressed every political concern, every security threat, and every logistical challenge with clarity. She anticipated objections before they were voiced, countering them with logic and calm authority. The ambassadors watched in disbelief. A princess they expected to falter was now a leader beyond what they imagined, and the human beside her, Elias, moved with quiet precision, guiding communications, subtly influencing outcomes, and ensuring that nothing escaped their control. But as always, the galaxy would not let them rise unchallenged. Under cover of diplomatic meetings, a faction of palace insiders attempted a coup. Guards were bribed, corridors secured, and attempts were made to isolate Lysera from her protector. Elias noticed the changes immediately, sensing patterns that others overlooked. Using his human-derived strategies, he anticipated the moves, intercepted communications, and quietly positioned loyal forces. Lysera, sensing the danger through her heightened awareness, remained calm. She had trained, observed, and learned, and now her abilities were no longer subtle. She could anticipate threats before they were visible, make decisions faster than even seasoned Arindian commanders, and act decisively. Together, human and princess moved like a single force, countering the coup with precision. By the time the conspirators realized their failure, the palace was secure. The loyalists strengthened, and the threat neutralized. In the aftermath, Lysera addressed the council. Her voice echoed through the chamber, clear and commanding. The galaxy assumes weakness where it sees difference. Humans are often underestimated, and so was I. But underestimation does not define us. Action, clarity, and courage define us. Those who act without these may hold titles, but those who embody them hold true power. The council fell silent. Even the most skeptical nobles could not deny the truth in her words. A human, underestimated and dismissed, had guided the princess, and together they had turned potential disaster into triumph. The celebration was brief, for the galaxy did not rest. Reports arrived of rogue fleets moving unpredictably, trade routes disrupted, and political alliances shifting. Lysera, standing with Elias, considered their next moves. She realized that leadership required constant vigilance, adaptation, and the ability to inspire trust. Elias's human perspective provided precisely that. Where others relied on brute strength or ancient custom, humans relied on observation, strategy, and adaptability. One evening, as the twin moons reflected on the palace's silvered waters, Lysera turned to Elias. "Do you think the galaxy truly understands what we are capable of?" Elias shook his head gently. "No. And that is our advantage. They will continue to doubt, to mock, to underestimate. But every time they do, we learn, adapt, and act, and every time we rise higher than they imagined." Lysera smiled, her eyes reflecting both the moons and the determination within her. "Then, let them watch. Let them mock. The galaxy will remember this moment, not for their assumptions, but for what we have accomplished." As the days passed, Lysera and Elias coordinated interstellar diplomacy with strategic precision. Alien envoys, once skeptical, now sought alliances and advice from the human-protected princess. Systems that had doubted Arindia's stability began to reconsider their positions, realizing that leadership combined with strategy and insight was a force that could not be ignored. The orb, still glowing softly in the inner archives, became a symbol of Lysera's transformation. It responded to her presence, amplifying her perception, her intuition, and her understanding of complex systems. It was not magic, as some had whispered, but a tool of ancient engineering that worked in harmony with human ingenuity and the princess's emerging abilities. Then came the final challenge. A fleet from a distant system, determined to test the limits of Arindia's leadership, approached with both curiosity and aggression. They expected hesitation, reliance on outdated systems, and a lack of foresight. They were wrong. Elias prepared the strategy, analyzing the fleet's patterns, anticipating their maneuvers, and calculating the optimal response. Lysera, now fully confident in her abilities, integrated her intuition with his calculations, issuing commands with precision that left no room for error. The fleet, confident and dismissive, was guided into positions that neutralized their advantage. By the end of the engagement, the Arindian forces had achieved complete control without unnecessary destruction, demonstrating the power of intelligence, strategy, and coordination over raw force. The galaxy watched, astounded. Reports spread rapidly. The Barren princess was no longer barren in capability. Humans, long underestimated, were capable of shaping outcomes that even the most powerful alien systems could not anticipate. In the aftermath, Lysera stood on the balcony once more, overlooking the city and the streams of silver light that reflected the twin moons. Elias joined her quietly. "We have changed the perception of more than just ourselves," Elias said softly. "The galaxy now knows that humans are not to be dismissed, and that leadership is measured not by rumor or appearance, but by action and wisdom. And we will continue to prove it, not for revenge, not for recognition, but because it is our responsibility. The galaxy will always test us, but we will always rise." For the first time, the palace felt truly calm. The threats had been met, the conspiracies neutralized, and the galaxy's doubts transformed into respect and cautious admiration. Lysera had embraced her full potential, her mind sharp and perceptive, her leadership unquestioned. Elias had demonstrated the ingenuity, courage, and adaptability of humans. Together, they had not only survived the challenges, but reshaped the expectations of an entire galaxy. And in that moment, Elias understood something profound. Humanity's true strength was not in what they were given, but in what they could achieve when underestimated. The galaxy had mocked him, dismissed the princess, and assumed weakness. Yet through observation, strategy, and courage, humans and Arindians together had rewritten the rules. Lysera turned to Elias, her eyes reflecting gratitude and partnership. "We have done more than survive," she said. "We have shown what is possible when the underestimated refuse to be defined by the expectations of others." Elias smiled, feeling the weight of months of preparation, challenge, and triumph lift from his shoulders. And this is only the beginning. The galaxy will continue to test us, but they will never underestimate humans again. As the twin moons rose higher, casting silver light across the palace and the city below, Elias and Lysera stood side by side. The galaxy had watched, it had judged, and it had underestimated. But now it had seen what humans, and those who believed in them, were capable of. The princess, once dismissed, now held her place not because of legacy or expectation, but because of wisdom, courage, and the partnership between a human and a ruler who refused to accept limits. The galaxy had mocked them once. Now it would remember their names, not as a joke, but as a warning. Underestimated humans, when prepared and determined, could change everything. And with that, the palace of Arindia, the human lieutenant and the once barren princess, looked toward the future, not with fear, but with confidence, strength, and the knowledge that the galaxy had been shown the truth of their potential.